When District Attorney Margaret Foster became Boston's most successful prosecutor, criminals feared her perfect conviction rate. But when her cocaine addiction and evidence tampering schemes consumed her, she began framing innocent people for capital murder and killing witnesses who discovered her crimes, turning courtrooms into deadly conviction factories. Before starting the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Now let's get back to the video. The Massachusetts autumn rain drummed against the windows of Boston's Suffolk County Courthouse as District Attorney Margaret Foster organized fabricated evidence files and witness intimidation materials for what would become the most dangerous prosecution of her 22-year career as New England's most feared criminal prosecutor and death penalty specialist. At 51 years old, Margaret had established herself as Boston's premier district attorney, commanding a 97% conviction rate in capital murder cases that attracted national media attention and political recognition from state and federal officials who valued her expertise in securing death sentences and her reputation for never losing high-profile criminal prosecutions that determined the fate of accused murderers facing execution. Margaret's prosecutor office occupied the most secure wing of Boston's criminal courthouse, featuring evidence storage facilities, witness protection coordination centers, and death penalty case preparation rooms that allowed her to oversee the state's most critical criminal prosecutions while maintaining absolute control over evidence presentation and witness testimony that determined whether accused criminals would spend life in prison or face execution for their alleged crimes against Massachusetts citizens. The interior of Margaret's prosecutor office reflected her mastery of criminal law and her understanding of the justice system's expectations for both conviction excellence and absolute certainty during death penalty proceedings, featuring walls displaying prosecutor awards from multiple governors, photographs of successful death sentence convictions, and testimonials from grateful victim families whose justice had been served through her relentless pursuit of criminal conviction and strategic expertise in capital punishment cases. But beneath Margaret's reputation for prosecutorial excellence lay a dangerous combination of cocaine addiction, systematic evidence fabrication, and calculated murder that had transformed her prosecutor office into criminal enterprises where threatening defense attorneys and suspicious investigators met their fate through planted evidence and witness elimination during vulnerable criminal proceedings. "Good morning, District Attorney Foster," said Public Defender James Chen, arriving for pretrial discovery discussions about his client's capital murder case that required Margaret's evidence disclosure and witness testimony coordination for an upcoming death penalty trial that would determine whether his client faced execution or life imprisonment. James had recently discovered prosecutorial irregularities and had begun questioning Margaret's explanations about evidence, chain of custody procedures, and witness testimony preparation that seemed to violate constitutional due process requirements and defense access rights. "Good morning, Mr. Chen," Margaret replied with the prosecutorial authority and criminal law expertise that had made her legendary among Boston's legal community, who viewed her as both justice warrior and conviction specialist, capable of securing death sentences in the most challenging criminal cases while ensuring absolute finality through sophisticated evidence presentation and strategic witness coordination affecting capital punishment proceedings throughout Massachusetts. James had become Margaret's most dangerous legal opponent, not because of his demanding defense requirements or his constitutional challenges, but because of his recent discovery of fabricated evidence and his growing awareness of the corruption operation that Margaret had been conducting while supposedly providing legitimate criminal prosecution services for Massachusetts' justice system and capital punishment enforcement. What James didn't know was that Margaret had been systematically framing innocent defendants and murdering legal professionals for over 4 years, using her prosecutor authority and access to evidence storage facilities to coordinate capital murder convictions against innocent people, while eliminating anyone who discovered her evidence fabrication or threatened to expose her criminal exploitation of prosecutorial power for personal advancement and conviction rate manipulation. Margaret's transformation from dedicated prosecutor to calculating killer had begun 6 years earlier when her cocaine addiction had escalated from performance enhancement during demanding capital murder trials to daily dependency that consumed her substantial prosecutor salary and forced her into desperate relationships with organized crime figures who offered enormous payments for prosecutorial cooperation in eliminating criminal competitors through false murder convictions and death penalty sentences targeting innocent individuals who threatened organized crime operations. Her addiction cost over $1,800 per day, while her access to Massachusetts evidence storage facilities and witness coordination programs provided unprecedented opportunities for framing innocent defendants through fabricated evidence and coerced testimony that generated millions in organized crime payments for eliminating criminal competition through state-sanctioned execution of innocent people. His criminal activities escalated when several defense attorneys and judicial oversight personnel discovered evidence of prosecutorial misconduct and threatened to report their suspicions to state bar associations and federal agencies investigating prosecutorial corruption targeting capital punishment systems throughout New England states. Margaret murdered her first victim, a suspicious forensic expert who detected fabricated DNA evidence, by orchestrating a lab accident using chemical contamination that appeared to be workplace safety incident rather than premeditated assassination designed to protect evidence fabrication operations. The success of her first murder convinced Margaret that eliminating threatening legal professionals and suspicious oversight investigators was both necessary for protecting her corruption operation and surprisingly manageable given her prosecutorial immunity and her ability to coordinate with organized crime networks who could stage accidents and eliminate witnesses while providing plausible cover stories involving laboratory safety and professional hazards. Over the following 4 years, Margaret murdered 10 additional individuals using various prosecutorial methods and organized crime coordination that took advantage of her district attorney authority, her access to criminal networks during vulnerable legal proceedings, and her ability to stage deaths as professional accidents or criminal targeting that occurred during routine prosecution activities with legal personnel who had access to sensitive information that could expose evidence fabrication operations. Her victims had been carefully selected based on their discovery of her criminal activities, their potential cooperation with judicial authorities, or their knowledge of evidence fabrication techniques that could expose her organized crime coordination and systematic prosecution of innocent defendants for capital murder convictions. Her victims included Dr. Patricia Williams, a forensic DNA analyst who had discovered evidence of systematic evidence tampering and whose laboratory consultation had resulted in fatal chemical exposure staged during routine evidence processing. Defense attorney Jennifer Martinez, who had reported suspicious prosecution tactics and whose case preparation meeting had ended in fatal mugging using weapons obtained through organized crime networks, and federal prosecutor David Foster, who had been tracking prosecutorial misconduct and whose courthouse consultation had resulted in fatal exposure to concentrated cocaine disguised as evidence contamination affecting federal oversight of state prosecution systems. District Attorney Foster, I need to discuss serious concerns about prosecutorial misconduct and reports of evidence fabrication connected to your capital murder prosecutions, said FBI Special Agent Sarah Rodriguez of the Bureau's Civil Rights Division, arriving at Margaret's office carrying federal warrants to inspect her evidence procedures and interview her about suspicious prosecution activities. Special Agent Rodriguez specialized in investigating prosecutorial corruption and had developed expertise in recognizing patterns of evidence manipulation and wrongful conviction operations affecting capital punishment systems. Special Agent Rodriguez's investigation represented an existential threat to Margaret's criminal operation, as her federal civil rights expertise and access to prosecutorial misconduct databases could expose the systematic evidence fabrication operations and connect her to multiple suspicious deaths during prosecution activities and courthouse meetings. Special Agent Rodriguez, I think there may be some misunderstanding about complex capital murder prosecutions and the unfortunate reality that legal professionals sometimes become targets of criminal retaliation despite advanced courthouse security protocols, Margaret said, while discreetly reaching for a modified evidence container that she had filled with concentrated fentanyl powder for emergency elimination of federal law enforcement threats through respiratory exposure. Perhaps we could discuss these concerns in our evidence storage facility, where I can demonstrate the chain of custody procedures that might explain these tragic coincidences. Capital murder prosecution involves dangerous criminal evidence that might appear suspicious to those unfamiliar with death penalty case preparation and organized crime evidence handling. Special Agent Rodriguez agreed to examine Margaret's evidence procedures, not realizing that the prosecutor was leading her to a secure storage facility where previous murders had been committed and where Margaret planned to kill her, using weaponized evidence containers that would release fatal fentanyl powder while appearing to be accidental exposure to drug evidence rather than deliberate murder by a prosecutor protecting her corruption and organized crime coordination operations. But Margaret's carefully planned murder of the federal agent was about to be prevented by the unexpected arrival of state judicial oversight officers who had been investigating prosecutorial misconduct and had identified connections to her systematic evidence fabrication activities. Justice Department Inspector Michael Torres had been conducting comprehensive investigation into prosecutorial corruption and capital punishment misconduct that exploited district attorney authority to facilitate wrongful convictions and eliminate potential witnesses to evidence fabrication affecting Massachusetts justice system and federal constitutional protections. Inspector Torres specialized in investigating prosecutorial crimes and had developed expertise in tracking district attorney offices that compromised judicial integrity while conducting systematic elimination of threats to evidence fabrication operations affecting capital punishment proceedings and federal oversight of state prosecution systems. The state investigation had been initiated by reports from multiple judicial oversight agencies and defense attorney organizations who noticed patterns of suspicious evidence handling and legal professional deaths, suggesting prosecutorial corruption networks were manipulating capital murder cases to facilitate wrongful convictions while eliminating witnesses through sophisticated methods disguised as professional accidents. District Attorney Margaret Foster, I'm Inspector Torres with the Justice Department, he announced as he entered the evidence storage facility where Margaret was preparing to poison Special Agent Rodriguez with fentanyl. I have federal warrants for your arrest on charges of systematic prosecutorial misconduct, evidence fabrication, conspiracy to commit wrongful conviction, and multiple counts of first-degree murder related to your exploitation of prosecutor authority for criminal evidence manipulation affecting capital punishment proceedings and federal constitutional protections. Margaret's reaction to the judicial oversight intervention was desperate attempts to maintain her prosecutorial credibility as she realized that federal agents and state oversight personnel had been investigating her corruption activities and connected them to systematic legal professional murders and organized crime coordination affecting Massachusetts prosecution system. Special Agent Rodriguez looked stunned as she realized how close she had come to being murdered by the prosecutor she was investigating for misconduct. Her civil rights investigation had not only exposed Margaret's corruption and murder operation, but also prevented her own death at hands of a killer using prosecutorial authority as cover for systematic elimination of federal agents and misconduct investigation threats. The comprehensive investigation that followed Margaret's arrest revealed the full scope of her criminal enterprise and sophisticated methods she had developed to exploit prosecutorial authority for systematic evidence fabrication and murder. Forensic analysis of Margaret's prosecution operations revealed extensive evidence of her corruption activities, including sophisticated evidence fabrication laboratories for creating false DNA evidence, detailed records of organized crime payments worth millions, and comprehensive files containing case information that had been manipulated to secure wrongful convictions against innocent defendants for capital murder charges. The investigation uncovered Margaret's connections to organized crime families who had been coordinating evidence fabrication and prosecutorial corruption operations while using her district attorney access to eliminate criminal competitors through false murder convictions and death penalty sentences affecting innocent individuals who threatened organized crime operations. Most disturbing was discovery of Margaret's detailed knowledge of forensic evidence systems and criminal conviction methods, which she had used to develop increasingly sophisticated approaches for framing innocent defendants while eliminating legal professionals who discovered her evidence fabrication operations or threatened to expose her organized crime coordination activities. District Attorney Margaret Foster was ultimately convicted of 11 counts of first-degree murder, systematic prosecutorial misconduct, evidence fabrication, conspiracy to commit wrongful conviction, conspiracy with organized crime, and numerous other charges related to her exploitation of prosecutor authority for criminal evidence manipulation affecting capital punishment proceedings and constitutional protections. The conviction sent unprecedented shockwaves throughout Massachusetts' legal community, prompting immediate reforms in prosecutorial oversight, evidence handling monitoring, and judicial addiction prevention measures designed to protect the justice system from exploitation by corrupted prosecutor officials involved in organized criminal activities. Several other prosecutors and legal officials were investigated for similar criminal activities, resulting in enhanced oversight of prosecution operations and new requirements for evidence verification, conviction monitoring, and constitutional protection measures, making it difficult for organized crime networks to exploit prosecutorial authority for systematic evidence fabrication operations. Special Agent Rodriguez and Inspector Torres received recognition for their collaborative investigation and became specialists in prosecutorial corruption investigation, developing new techniques for identifying evidence fabrication operations and protecting the justice system from exploitation by corrupted prosecutor officials. Public Defender James Chen and other surviving legal professionals required extensive case review and constitutional protection verification to overcome trauma of learning that their prosecutor opponent had been systematically fabricating evidence and murdering legal professionals while exploiting her authority for organized criminal activities. The case prompted comprehensive changes in prosecutorial regulation, including mandatory oversight and addiction screening for prosecutors with capital case authority, enhanced monitoring of evidence handling and conviction procedures, real-time federal supervision of death penalty prosecutions, and new reporting procedures for suspicious prosecutorial activities involving constitutional violations. Margaret's conviction led to increased cooperation between prosecutor oversight agencies and federal organizations investigating organized crime, with new protocols designed to identify prosecution systems that might be exploited for systematic criminal activities while eliminating witnesses to prosecutorial corruption and constitutional violations. 5 years after Margaret's conviction and life imprisonment, Boston's legal community continued implementing safeguards designed to protect the justice system from prosecutors who might abuse their positions for criminal purposes, affecting constitutional protections and federal oversight operations. The prosecutor who had promised to serve justice and protect constitutional rights had instead used her prosecutorial authority to commit systematic evidence fabrication and murder while exploiting the justice system for organized crime coordination, threatening foundations of constitutional protection and federal legal oversight. District Attorney Margaret Foster's final case had been permanently concluded by comprehensive investigation of federal and state justice, where she would serve multiple life sentences without possibility of parole, proving that even prosecutorial officials who attempted to exploit their legal authority for criminal gain could be identified, investigated, and brought to justice when dedicated federal and state agencies worked together to protect constitutional rights from predatory prosecutorial corruption. The prosecutor's final case had ended with her permanent removal from legal practice, serving as a lasting reminder that those entrusted with constitutional protection must never abuse that sacred responsibility, and that prosecutorial officials who would exploit justice system trust and legal authority for criminal gain will ultimately face full consequences of their betrayal of prosecutorial integrity and constitutional service. Thank you very much for listening. Please let us know what you think of this story in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any other videos.